Hey, this is Zulem Urbina, and tune into the relay for the latest news in boxing all around the world. Thank you for supporting myself and other female boxers. We truly appreciate it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Set to make an appearance on the undercard of Richardson Richards versus William Zepeda, unbeaten up-and-comer from right here in the US of A, Jasmine Artiga,
31 years old,
will be sharing the ring with journeywoman from right here in the US of A, Haley Pasion.
journeywoman with an upside-down record, last in action earlier this year opposite the ring Zulem Urbina, a friend to the channel.
This fight between Jasmine and Haley is set to go down at super flyweight, scheduled for 8 rounds. I don't think it's a coincidence that Jasmine is fighting Haley Pasion, who would serve as a common opponent between her and Zulem Urbina, who I saw 1 or 2 weeks ago, Jasmine calling out Zulem Urbina for a fight.
Jasmine, who sports a professional record of 10 wins with no losses, 1 draw, 5 knockouts.
As stated, I don't think it's a coincidence that Jasmine was calling out Zulem not but a few weeks ago, and a few weeks later, she's set to share the ring with the last woman that Zulem Urbina fought. I get the sense that Jasmine is trying to cross-compare performances, that if she can't get Zulem in the ring, she'll fight somebody that Zulem fought.
Being debuted as a professional in May of 2017, Jasmine has kept a good, steady schedule of activity over the years.
She boxed once in February of 2020, the year the pandemic hit, once in February of 2021, then once again in July of 2022, and she's already seen action earlier this year, in January.
This will be the first time in a long time that Jasmine boxes 2 times in the same calendar year. The last time she did that was years ago in 2019.
Set to share the ring with Haley Pasion, who was last in action earlier this summer in July opposite the ring Zulem Urbina. She dropped a decision to Zulem. Before that, she dropped a decision to Fatima Dudieva.
I think she's going to get dropped by Jasmine Artiga.
In what is being billed as an 8-rounder in the super flyweight division. Super flyweight, that's where Mexico's own Ashley Gonzalez holds a WBC title. Japan's own Mizuki Hiruta, she's got the WBO, and Clara Lescurat, she's got the WBA.
Fairly confident the IBF title has gone vacant in the last couple of weeks. The last fighter to hold it was Argentina's Maciela Lujan.
Fairly confident she doesn't have it anymore. Jasmine Artiga, I can only imagine, aspires to share the ring with one of these fighters, one of these champions, and she's making her way there.
Though I didn't expect to see Jasmine Artiga pop up on a Matchroom show. She's not a Matchroom fighter.
Good fights on that card, good fights on that show. Austin Ammo Williams is going to be facing Steve Rolls, Jessica McCaskill, and Sandy Ryan. Sandy's going to be making her U.S. debut in what is a unification match with Jessica McCaskill.
Obviously, the main event, Richardson Hitchens is going to be taking on seasoned veteran southpaw hard puncher Jose Zepeda.
Jasmine Artiga is going to be taking on Haley Pasion. So if you're not familiar with Jasmine, what do you need to know about this fighter, this unbeaten up-and-comer? Well, she's got very good physical dimensions for the weight. Campaigning at super flyweight, given her physical dimensions, there are genuine possibilities for her north of super fly at bantam, 118.
If one day she decides to move up.
Slim build, but good height, good length for a super flyweight, enough to fill out at bantamweight. Strong puncher, athletic, good fundamentals, good shot selection, and she's quick, she's strong.
Yeah, she can punch.
I've seen bits and pieces of Jasmine Artiga here and there over the years.
She's a good fighter.
Seems like the kind of fighter that can be guided to an alphabet title, a world title, with the right promotion.
Seems like.
She's already got more professional experience, more rounds in the bank than reigning WBO champion of Japan, Mizuki Hiruta. She's already got more fights than Clara Lescurat. I think it would be a little bit too soon to put her in the ring with Ashley Gonzalez of Mexico, the WBC champion, but the other two...
You could give her decent odds against the other two. You could give her decent odds against either Mizuki Hiruta or Clara Lescurat.
Jasmine Artiga's opportunity to perhaps make an impression on Eddie Hearn, make an impression on Matchroom. Perhaps if she does a bang-up job on this undercard, they might think about signing her, bringing her into the fray. Entertainment value goes a long way.
You can win, and winning is good, but you don't want to just win. You want to put on a show.
Opposite the ring, Haley Pasion, she might. Haley Pasion sports a professional record of 2 wins with 4 losses, no draws, no recorded knockouts, and she's never been knocked out in 6 professional bouts. But there's the first time for everything.
Jasmine might be the first to knock her out.
Stated she's a very strong puncher, a strong fighter, athletic.
Many female boxers right here in the US of A wouldn't kill for an opportunity to box on a Matchroom show to show their talents.
Showcase their abilities and maybe get picked up, get promoted by Matchroom. A golden opportunity for Jasmine Artiga. Look for Jasmine September 23rd on the undercard of Hitchison Richards versus Jose Zepeda. And welterweight news, former champion Keith Thurman says he will entertain facing Jaron Boots Ennis if no Crawford opportunity arises, and that's an exercise in futility. I mean, even saying that is a redundancy, because we all know that Terrence Crawford...
Errol Spence Jr. activated his rematch clause, so there's supposed to be a second fight between them. But even if there weren't a second fight, Crawford was leaving welterweight anyway.
At least in previous years, Keith Thurman was lukewarm to the idea of facing Terrence Crawford. Although he hasn't shown too much interest in facing Jaron Ennis either, the 34-year-old isn't exactly opposed to it. First, Thurman is looking to regain his own championship status with a matchup against Crawford. If that doesn't happen, a showdown against Ennis is one he would welcome. Of course I'll entertain a fight with him, Thurman told Mill City Boxing. If that's the contract that comes in my face and we can't get a champion...
The problem with Keith Thurman is that he seems to be trapped in a bubble, a time warp, where he negotiates fights on the pretense that it's still 2019, and it's not.
They had him on standby for Errol Spence Jr. last year if things didn't work out with Terrence Crawford, and last year they didn't. And he was on standby earlier this year for Errol up until the fight with Terrence got made.
So his strategy to corner an Errol Spence Jr. fight, in the end, it didn't pan out, it didn't work.
Because he didn't get him, and he's not about to.
If that's what the plan was. Currently, Jaron Ennis dismissed Keith Thurman's trash talk, saying he talks way better than he fights.
Since having dropped that decision to Manny Pacquiao way back there in 2019, all these years later, Keith Thurman has only boxed once, just once, and that was over a year ago, closer to 2 actually, the Mario Barrios fight at the beginning of last year.
We're closing in on the end of this one.
News of Thurman being somewhat dismissive of Ennis reached the city of brotherly love. Although the ball was in his court, Ennis didn't find a need to bash Thurman. He did, however, acknowledge that the former unified titleist is more bark than bite. These boxing guys are crazy, said Ennis to YSM Sports Media.
All I do is talk. He talks way better than he fights.
It's one way to put it. If it was Keith Thurman's intention, if it was his plan to corner a fight with Errol Spence Jr. at an opportune time, that proved to be an inopportune plan, because ultimately he never got him, and he's not about to get him. Errol activated his rematch clause to fight Terrence again, so that leaves Thurman out in the cold. It was thought that Keith Thurman might be facing Yordanis Ugas at some point this summer or in the fall, and it turns out Ugas is fighting Mario Barrios.
Not Keith Thurman.
Did Keith Thurman really need to take 2 years off after losing the belt to Manny Pacquiao? Was that really necessary? That at no point in the 2 years he was gone, at no point could he have come back and fought someone, maybe 2 someones?
Three.
I'm just wondering if that amount of time off, was that really necessary? Because it seems a periodic, almost a scheduled occurrence with Keith Thurman that he might be out for upwards of a year to 2 years.
The last 6 years, the man nicknamed one time has fought just 3 times. But regardless of his rare ring appearances, Thurman is hoping to land an undisputed title shot against Terrence Crawford. Ennis, though, is hoping for the same.
With both fighters eyeing the same goal, a showdown between them could be next. If by chance the two could successfully hammer out a deal and face off, Ennis doesn't believe that Thurman, while accomplished, will give him too many issues in the ring. Stoppage, said Ennis, when asked how he'll beat Thurman. He's a good fighter, but there's a lot of things that I see that he does that are wrong.
Inactivity is one of them.
I don't know what it is with these PBC fighters and these long hiatuses from the sport. Is it that they think they don't have an effect on their ability to perform? Is it that they don't see the error of their ways? I mean, it was Errol Spence Jr. that said that he doesn't believe in tune-up fights whilst coming off over a year of inactivity going into the Crawford fight. And Thurman is even worse.
He's not helping his situation.
Much like the rest of the boxing community at large, Jaron Ennis can't help but be dismissive whenever Keith Thurman starts to bump his gums, because that's all he does these days. He's not actually relevant to the welterweight division, hasn't done anything relevant in the welterweight division in a very, very long time.
I think he should just retire.
What he wants for a fight, a meaningful fight with a meaningful opponent, nobody's about to give that to him. Nobody's going to pay an arm and a leg to see Keith Thurman fight because people have grown so used to him not fighting.
He'll be all right.
The boxing world has grown accustomed to doing without Keith Thurman's presence in the squared circle.
Doing all these interviews about all these fights that aren't about to happen. He's not just wasting the interviewer's time, he's wasting his own.
The off chance that Jaron Ennis were lucky enough, fortunate enough to get him in the ring and he stopped him, would that surprise anyone?
Is that even a big win anymore?
Finally, the ongoing fallout of the now defunct Shakur Stevenson versus Frank Martin fight. Shakur Stevenson seeks a new opponent for WBC title fight.
But a newly vacated WBC title.
It's already on to the next one for Shakur Stevenson. BoxingScene.com has confirmed that Frank Martin will no longer proceed with a planned WBC lightweight title fight versus Stevenson. An effort to finalize the planned November 16th ESPN main event in Las Vegas was instead met with the response from Martin's team that they were no longer moving forward with those plans. ESPN boxing insider Mike Kopinger was the first to report the development, which top-ranked officials confirmed to Boxing Scene.
This fight was ordered by the World Boxing Council.
Approximately 4 or 5 days ago, on the 6th, called off a scheduled purse bid because reportedly both sides, both TGB, who represents Frank Martin, and Top Rank, who represents Shakur Stevenson, had agreed to terms.
Thus, on that premise, the PBC called off the scheduled purse bid.
They would have needed confirmation from both sides in order to do so, as they are the ones overseeing all of this, or they were. They're the ones that brought Team Frank Martin and Team Stevenson to the table.
Because they ordered it.
Comes news just days after it was believed that the fight was set to grace the fall schedule. The two sides reportedly reached a deal in principle hours before a scheduled purse bid hearing on Tuesday. Stevenson was always on board with the fight as he aims to become a 3-division champion. It was believed at the time that Martin, who is promoted by Errol Spence's Man Down Promotions, was just as eager for the fight. As previously reported by Boxing Scene's Keith Idek, the two sides came to a financial agreement for the ordered vacant title fight. The change in the past 24 hours, 48 now.
Once Martin's side was presented with a contract, he instead opted to walk away from what would have been his first title fight.
That's what the reports state, though Frank Martin himself has taken to his own social media saying they didn't send him a contract.
In his own words, he said, "This internet shit be the worst. Motherfuckers are acting like they sent over a contract or something."
I'm confused. I'll lace him up with any one of you motherfuckers at 135.
Not Shakur Stevenson, apparently.
Newark's Shakur Stevenson, who is promoted by Top Rank and co-managed by Jay Prince and Josh Dubin, has already laid down the gauntlet for his next targeted opponent. Most duck fighter in the sport of boxing, Stevenson posted on his Instagram story Saturday afternoon, "Edwin, get ready. I am tired of yo bitch ass saying my name."
The fighter who Stevenson referred to is Edwin De Los Santos. The 23-year-old Dominican southpaw has been relentless in pursuing a fight with Shakur Stevenson.
The fighter who stated, "Remember that I am the danger," Shakur Stevenson.
Sounds good.
Wait a minute. Reports documenting the fight's collapse indicate that a contract was sent over to Frank Martin's team, even though Frank Martin himself is saying he didn't receive a contract.
That's what he said.
Making this a bona fide case of he said, she said, to where it all boils down to, who do you believe? Do you believe the Top Rank side of things and their account of events? Or do you believe Frank Martin?
Well, here's what we know. Approximately 4 or 5 days ago, the World Boxing Council, the ones who ordered this fight and brought these two teams to the table, 4 or 5 days ago, they canceled the purse bid.
And they canceled the purse bid because they got confirmation from both sides, the Top Rank side and the TGB side, that they had agreed to a deal.
They got that far.
The ways they had agreed to terms, and all they had to do was finalize the deal. So why did Frank Martin, based on reports, withdraw in the 13th hour? Perhaps it's because, in the 13th hour, the people at the PBC found something else for him to do.
On their own side.
Someone else for him to fight.
On their own side.
Some are already speculating that the reason that Frank has withdrawn from the Stevenson fight is because they're lining him up for a Gervonta Davis fight. A Gervonta Davis fight set to go down sometime later on this year. That's what
Some people are under that impression.
Twitter user that goes by the name Vernon Davis stated, "Why fight Stevenson when you can fight Tank? You've got a better chance to win and make more. It's not ideal, but it's a very smart business move. What y'all need to understand, this is a money-making business."
Well, what I think Vernon needs to understand is that at this time, we've no confirmation that Frank Martin has withdrawn from the Stevenson fight to fight Gervonta Davis.
I mean, that's not the story. That's not what the journalists are saying, and that's not what Frank Martin is saying or Tom Brown of TGB Promotions. That seems to be a notion.
It's an assumption.
We don't know if it's a fact. And if it isn't, that reflects poorly on Frank Martin. In spite of this, some are actually laying the blame at the feet of not only Shakur Stevenson, but Bob Arum.
A mongoloid that goes by the name Primo One.
He said Shakur needs to just get out of that contract with Bob. Now I know why Mayweather said Bob is a down-low crook.
The fuck does Frank Martin withdrawing from a fight have to do with Bob Arum?
Nothing, the guy's just deflecting. He's trying to deflect the blame away from the Heyman fighter, the PBC fighter. Another guy that goes by the name Derek Forbes claims a low-ball offer was made to Frank. He turned it down, just like Shakur with the Haney offer. $1 million is small these days.
Small to who? Because Frank ain't no seven-figure fighter. He's barely a six-figure fighter.
You see that they're already running interference for Frank Martin because they know how this looks. Unbeaten up-and-comer and Shakur Stevenson's top-ranked stablemate Keyshawn Davis said, "Y'all are gonna start realizing which side of the street's really been ducking. I be trying to tell y'all, but y'all don't want to listen."
Amen to that.
Shakur Stevenson himself reacted to the news by saying, "The media is sick. They make up rumors just to protect certain fighters' image. What are y'all even talking about, man?"
That man ain't pull out to fight nobody else.
Addressing the notion that perhaps the reason that Frank walked away from fighting Shakur is because he's about to fight Gervonta. And I reiterate, at least at this time, we ain't got no confirmation.
That's just an idea people are floating around.
Twitter user that goes by the name Carl Brandt said, "Frank isn't 22 or 23. He's 28. This fight was an opportunity with a seven-figure purse. Frank has no name,
none,
no fan base,
zero,
no mandate for big money.
Zilch.
He should have taken this fight. Win, lose, or draw, he should have taken this fight."
My thoughts.
Based on what Frank Martin is walking away from, a seven-figure payday, a world title opportunity, and a more high-profile fight than any fight he's had so far, I think the only permissible alternative would be a Gervonta Davis fight, on the premise that you might make more money with Gervonta than you stood to make with Shakur.
Then it would make sense. But if you walked away from Shakur to fight Isaac or to fight Edwin De Los Santos, that won't do. That's no good.
None of those guys are on the level of Shakur Stevenson, and you won't make the money fighting them that you stood to make fighting Shakur Stevenson. So if it turns out that Frank walked away from Shakur to fight anyone other than Gervonta Davis,
It's a duck.
it's a textbook duck. It's a plain old duck. It seems that, not but a few days ago, TGB was on board to go through with the fight. That's why the purse bid got canceled. And then suddenly, Frank Martin pulls out.
Perhaps at the last minute, they found something for Frank to do. The question is, with who?
Better be somebody good, because you're walking away from a career-high purse and a title shot.
Frank's the one that's got to explain himself. Let's see what he says.